Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kat, and I'm the Outreach Coordinator with Ontario Streams, which is an environmental charity based out of York Region. We do a lot of work trying to help fix up our local habitats, specifically our water habitats where lots of our fish live. And today I have a presentation to share with you about the conservation here in King Township. So we will focus on some of the different endangered animals that we have locally, as well as how Ontario Streams is trying to help these local animals out. And then we'll finish up talking about ways that we all can help our local environment. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. There we go. So as I said, I'm Kat, and we're talking about conservation in King. I would like to start with a land acknowledgement and acknowledge that the land Ontario Streams works on is the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and many bands of Chippewa, and of course many other First Nations groups. Indigenous peoples, they were the first caretakers of our land, the first stewards of our land. And hopefully today, as we continue to learn more about our local environment, we can reflect on how we can also be good caretakers to our local environment. Here we have a map of King Township, way small, just above Toronto there. And we can see that we are located right in the middle of the Great Lakes, which are the largest freshwater system in the whole world. So we are so lucky to live where we do and have access to all of this fresh water. And it's also a really great habitat for so many local species, so many local living things. So let's explore a little bit more about what we have in our own neighborhoods. So you can take a moment here to think about what sort of animals you've seen in your own neighborhood. Maybe you've been out for a walk on the snowy weekend and you spotted some new animal friends out there while you were walking around. Maybe you saw something new, some new birds, maybe some new mammals out there. But here in King Township and the Greater Toronto Area as a whole, we have over 1,000 species of animals, 1,000 types of different animals. We have everything from beavers, which we might not see all that often, but they are right here in York Region. We have lots of insects, and there's probably hundreds and hundreds of kinds of insects here, like this ladybug. Maybe these days we've seen some more coyotes or foxes than we usually would. And they're getting a little bit more brave since we've been staying home. But sometimes we'll see these too around. We also have lots of turtles. There's 8 different kinds of turtles in Ontario, and we'll talk about some of them a little bit later in this presentation. And then we also have birds like our blue jays here. And some of our migrating birds are slowly starting to come back here. Still a little too chilly, but maybe in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to see some of our friends who flew south for the winter start to return. We also have here in the Greater Toronto Area about 50 species at risk. And this is just a way of saying, a way of categorizing different living things based on how close they are to extinction. And if we know about dinosaurs, we know extinct means gone forever, right? Dinosaurs used to be here, but something happened, and now they are not here anymore. Now, we do have lots of animals that live closer to home that need our help too, that are endangered on their way to becoming extinct if we don't try and help them. And we have things like these Redside dace at the top left, followed by Jefferson salamanders. Both of those we'll talk about in a minute. We've got Acadian flycatcher on the bottom left, monarch butterfly in the bottom middle, and then up top we have barn swallows, and then underneath that big turtle is a snapping turtle. So different living things. They're categorized by the government on how close they are to becoming extinct, gone forever. So these ones here are the ones that most need our help. So of course, any way that we can help our local environment will help any of the different animals that live in our local environment. Today, I'm going to focus on the endangered animals that we have that live in or near water, because at Ontario Streams, we are really trying to fix those habitats in or near the water. So we're going to look at the ones that, of course, are the most important in our eyes. So to start, we have a Redside dace, and they are called this because they have red on their side, as we can see in these pictures, and dace is just another word for a small fish. So these are just little minnows. They only get to be about 10 centimeters long. They are a very unique fish. They are the only minnow in Canada who actually jumps up out of the water to catch their food. And they like to eat things like mosquitoes and flies. And I don't know about any of you, but I am not a big fan of mosquitoes or mosquito bites. So we really want to make sure that we have lots of these Redside dace who could keep eating those mosquitoes for us. However, these guys are endangered, and that is because they are pretty picky. They need really clean, cold, and clear water to survive. And unfortunately, right here in the Greater Toronto Area, including in King Township, they're having a tough time finding this really good, clean habitat. So that's because we have so many humans living in this area, and often with lots of humans living in really big cities. That means that we are sometimes creating more pollution, more litter, more chemicals ending up in the water, which is not good for these little fish. Here we've got a video of Redside dace, so you can see if you can try and spot them. Of course, they are the ones with the red on its side. So let's see if we can find it in this video. Maybe you saw it there. Let's replay it one more time and see if we can really see that red side. Lots of fish here with black stripes, but only one with the red side. And there it is, slow motion in front of the camera. Another locally endangered fish that we have is the Atlantic salmon. And Atlantic salmon have actually been considered locally extinct or extirpated for over 100 years in Lake Ontario. So many of us have likely eaten Atlantic salmon before, so we know that they're not totally extinct like the dinosaurs. However, they are considered locally extinct. So that means that while they used to live in a lot of different places, they are now no longer found here in Lake Ontario. So if we've eaten Atlantic salmon, it's from the Atlantic Ocean, right, far away from here. The population that used to live here in Lake Ontario is no longer here. But we are working to try and bring them back. So Ontario Streams works to raise these little baby Atlantic salmon in hatcheries as well as in the streams, and we raise them and keep them safe for about the first 6 months of their lives or so, because that's when it's most vulnerable. There's going to be larger fish who are going to try to eat them. Also, big changes in the weather can make them less healthy. So we take care of them for that first 6 months, and then we help them out into the world with a little bit of a head start. The reason that they are locally extinct is because when the first settlers came here over 150 years ago, they saw all these Atlantic salmon and they got really excited. And they ended up A, overfishing them, B, putting in dams, hydroelectric dams that later became hydroelectric dams, as well as just general habitat destruction through industrialization. So those big three factors there really led to the decline of the Atlantic salmon. But like I said, we're trying to bring them back. And there are some good news stories out there. We are seeing these returning Atlantic salmon come back to the freshwater rivers. So here we again have some video footage. The ones on the left are from one of our little hatcheries this year. and you can see them. This is just from last week. So they are teeny tiny at this stage, only about 1 centimeter long. And we keep them in what we call an incubation tray, which is kind of like a little condo. And each little egg gets its own space in the condo. And then when they hatch, they're able to stay there for a few weeks or so, again, just to make sure they're nice and stable. And this also helps prevent the spread of disease or fungus by keeping them all in their little individual squares. These ones here will be released into a local river up in the Humber in probably May or June. We'll put them out into the world. This past summer, we were doing some research, checking what sorts of fish we're finding in our local rivers. And here in the Humber, we did find some older Atlantic salmon. So these guys here were likely ones from our Bringing Back the Salmon program. So we can see that they're getting a little bit bigger, a couple inches long here, and they're nice and healthy, which means that our program trying to bring them back is doing pretty well. Oops. So to switch gears and let's look at a different kind of animal here, we have a western chorus frog. And these are pretty small frogs that we would find around here, about 4 centimeters long maximum, so pretty tiny little frogs. They are really known for their dark kind of superhero mask over their eyes, and then they've got nice white lipstick on, and those are two big features that we look for to try and identify a western chorus frog. A really cool thing about western chorus frogs is that they can actually survive being totally frozen through. And just like a little frogsicle, they're able to just hide underneath all of these leaves and get cozy for the winter and freeze right through. And then as the temperatures start to warm, they defrost and they're all totally back to normal. They are one of the first frogs that we start to see in the spring. So maybe in the next few weeks, they'll start to be a little more active. And their call, their little frog call that they make sounds sort of like a fingernail on a comb. And I'll show you a video in just a second. But the threats that these little frogs are facing is mostly due to habitat loss and fragmentation. And that is, fragmentation just means that their good habitat is getting smaller and farther apart, right? It's becoming teeny tiny pieces in spaces that used to be much bigger and healthier. They really like wetlands and foresty areas too. And so unfortunately, we're losing a lot of that nice habitat. So they're having a tough time finding a good place to live. Here we have a video of the little frog calling. Hopefully we can hear it all right on Zoom or WebEx.
Hi, Kat. Unfortunately, we can't hear it.
Sorry, sometimes you have to play around with the settings, but we can go and look on YouTube afterwards, Western chorus frog calling, and you can hear it, or you can just try running your finger over a comb, and that will give you more or less the same sound. Another little guy that we have here that needs our help is the Jefferson Salamander. These ones here are sometimes thought to be the ones that are the most close to extinction, and they need the most help from us humans. And I think they are also the most cute of any of the endangered species that we have here. These little guys, they are pretty cute, right? They've got the gray and brown skin, and they, as adults, will reach to be about 12 to 20 centimeters long. So about the size of a little pencil here. They are, at this time of year, they are just starting to become more active again, starting to wiggle around out of the leaf litter they've been hiding under all winter. And they are going to be very soon starting to look for ponds where they will breed. So these guys are amphibians, and we know that means that they spend part of their life in water and part of their life on land. Same with our frog friend back there. And that means with the Jefferson salamander, these adults are looking for a pond to lay their eggs in. So they need the weather to become a little warmer so that it's not frozen anymore. And then they'll find some little twigs in these ponds to then attach their eggs to. And then eggs will later hatch and create little baby Jefferson salamanders. The big issue that these Jefferson salamanders are facing is getting hit by cars while they're trying to find this good habitat. So they are seeing less good habitat, and means they have to travel farther to find a good place to lay their eggs. So as we can see this, again, super cute video, we can see how tough it is for these little guys to travel. They have very short legs, they can't move very quickly, and if you can imagine being in a car, driving a car at night, because they are nocturnal, meaning they are most active at night. They are going to be crossing these roads in the middle of the night, and someone driving a car is not likely going to be able to stop to avoid hitting a little salamander, just like it's already hard enough to try and stop from hitting a deer. So it's that much harder to try and avoid these little guys. They're also having some trouble with climate change, and just again, the little ponds that they rely so heavily on to lay their eggs, they're having a hard time finding these ponds because of the uncertain weather and climate changes that we're seeing. And then to switch it up again, we'll talk about two kinds of turtles that we have here. We've got snapping turtles, and then the next slide will be about Blandings turtles. And all eight types of turtles that we have here in Ontario are listed as at risk. So all of them need our help. The snapping turtle is the largest turtle that we have, the largest freshwater turtle that we have in Canada. And as a baby, it's only about the size of a toonie, and we can see that in that top left photo, a tiny little snapping turtle in front of a quarter. So teeny tiny little guys. But as an adult, they can reach about 50 centimeters, half a meter, very large turtles. They spend their winter at this time of year. They are hiding in the mud at the bottom of our lakes and rivers, but they are not going too deep. They're pretty close to the shore. And they will start to, again, become more active like all of us in the spring, and on to trying to find somewhere to lay their eggs. It takes about 20 years for a snapping turtle's body to be ready to start laying eggs. So it's a long time to stay alive. And often they can run into a lot of issues, the same as our little salamanders. Sometimes they can get hit by a car while crossing a road. And these guys, we don't want to see them start to disappear because they are really helpful. They are omnivores, but they also eat a lot of dead things. So when they're looking for live things to eat, they're looking at plants, bugs, fish, frogs, snakes, but they also are pretty happy to eat dead things. And they might be attracted to the side of a road from some roadkill, or if there's some dead fish on the beach, they're happy to eat that too. So they're really good at helping clean up all of our lakes and wetlands, kind of being a little caretaker, and getting our habitats nice and clean. The reason they got their name is because they can't pull themselves all the way into their shells. Sometimes we've seen on TV with turtles that are able to pull themselves in and just hide out inside their shell. However, a snapping turtle's body is too big and their shell is too small for them to really hide and avoid any predators, things like raccoons or foxes or skunks. Those are lots of animals that want to eat our snapping turtles, especially as babies. So instead, they've developed this way to snap and bite at any threat, any sort of predator that's coming to try and eat them. As I said, one aspect of why they are endangered is because they are going near the roads, getting hit by cars. That's not very nice. Another part is that because it does take so long for them to have their babies, that adds an extra layer to it all, trying to avoid getting hit by cars, avoid being eaten. They are also sometimes being poached, which means they're being taken illegally from the habitat. And we'll find out about that too with our Blandings turtle as well. And here's our little Blandings turtle, which is again another super cute endangered animal that we have here. We have to remember that we see often so many pictures of panda bears and polar bears and all of these super cute endangered animals that live very far away from us. But we have to remember that we have lots of endangered super cute animals that live close to us too. And that's definitely a Blandings turtle. It's often called the turtle with the sun under its chin because of this bright yellow that makes it look almost like it's smiling. Unlike the snapping turtle, this guy has a shell that has a hinge on the bottom, which actually means that they can pull themselves all the way into their shell and then almost just fully close themselves in, which is great for avoiding being eaten or bothered by any other animals out there. Just like the snapping turtle, again, they are going under the mud and hanging out at the bottom of our wetlands over the winter. And they, again, are thinking about starting to wake up and come up and say hi at this point of year. They're a pretty medium-sized turtle at about 30 centimeters at their oldest or biggest. And again, like our snapping turtle, they are omnivores looking at eating crayfish, bugs, fish, frogs, and plants. But unlike a snapping turtle, they generally only want to eat things while they are on land. And water, sorry. So unlike other turtles, these guys will actually eat in the water as well as on land. And they do have similar threats that we're seeing to our snapping turtle. However, poaching is again a big threat to the Blandings turtle. Because they are so cute, one might be out for a walk and see a little baby Blandings turtle and say, I want that as a pet. And they might end up taking this little guy home. And again, because they are endangered, we really need every single one of them out there in the wild trying to keep their populations up. So we want to make sure that they're all out there where they belong and not being bothered by us humans. There's a lot of conservation work being done to bring these little guys back and really help them out. At the Toronto Zoo, as well as other organizations, they have Head Start programs where, like us with the salmon, they are helping the little babies in that first little part of their life, giving them, again, that head start to going back out into the wild and feeling a little safer and healthier while out there. Now that we've learned about a lot of these different animals here and their habitats, why should we even care? And the reality is that nature is really good for us. When we spend time in nature, it can help reduce our stress. It can improve our memory, improve our attention span, help us feel a little bit healthier with a boosted immunity, boosted energy levels, and even some boosted creativity. It helps improve our physical fitness and coordination and so much more. So it's really important for us to think about all of the ways that nature helps us and what we can do to help nature in return. So now looking at what Ontario Streams is doing to help. As I said, we're an environmental charity. We're here to try and help the nature that we have here, specifically our water systems. So one big thing that we do is we help fix up these habitats, these spaces where animals live. So in this case, we have before and after pictures of a farm in Vaughan, so not too far from King. And we have this river here that has Redside dace in it. And those we know are a little endangered fish, and they need really clean, clear, and cold water to survive. However, at this farm, there were a lot of cows, and the cows just love walking through the water and stirring up all of the soil and sand in the water, which can make the water unclear, not necessarily dirty, but just unclear. And our little Redside dace, they need that clear water. They've got to see through the water to catch their prey, those insects. So what we did was we helped install some fencing to help limit the areas where the cows could get into the water, so the cows could still get to the river, but just not all the way through the whole river that they have here. We also went and planted a lot of shrubs, little trees, and other plants along this river. We can see on the left that it's all just a green lawn, and that's not all that great for our habitats. We like to see lots of different kinds of plants, and especially a lot of these tall grasses and these shrubs are really good for our rivers. With the grasses, it creates a space where our bugs like to hang out, which then means there's going to be more bugs along the river, which means there's more food for the Redside dace. With our shrubs, they have nice roots that can hold the sand and soil where it belongs so that we don't have river banks that fall over. And these shrubs and trees can create shade to keep the water cold. So a lot of different ways that we're helping this habitat to really fix it up and get it healthier for the Redside dace. Another thing we do is we help with erosion. And erosion is when we have these river banks that are really sheer and they have no sand and soil in there. And we can see on this picture on the left, let me pull up the laser pointer and show you what we're trying to look at here. But we've got all of the shadow area, which is empty. And there's no more sand and soil in there to hold up these trees. And so that might mean that these trees and roots could collapse and just keep having an unstable bank. Erosion happens because in our cities, we have so much pavement, so much parking lots, sidewalks, roads, all of this pavement is an area where the water can't naturally go back into the ground. So instead, what happens is all of this rain during a storm goes into our sewer drains, our storm drains. And these are connected right to our rivers. This water doesn't get cleaned first. It doesn't get anything first before it gets into our rivers. And during a big rainstorm where we've got lots and lots of rain and lots of flooding, we have so much water in our sewers that's moving very fast and goes into our rivers where it's moving again very fast, lots of water, and it just carves through our banks and takes out all of that sand and soil, which is how we are then left with this area where we don't have any sand and soil for the trees to grow in. And so what we do is we want to fix this. We want to make sure that our rivers are nice and smooth and don't have all of these areas where it could lead to even more unhealthy habitats. So we come in and we stick a bunch of trees into these areas. So we use things like donated live Christmas trees. Right after the holidays, we work with our city partners to collect these Christmas trees that people have left out on the curb. And we take those and we stick them into these areas where we've got this shadow and this empty space with erosion. We fill that up, and then the sand and the soil that's in the water over time will fill in here. And then we have just a nice new riverbank that's much stabler and much more healthy. So that's what we're doing to try and fix the habitats when we work in the water. We also work to remove invasive species. An invasive species is some sort of living thing that's come from somewhere else in the world, and now it is here and it's causing problems. So one example of an invasive species is common buckthorn. And this is a tree that came here with our first settlers. They wanted something that reminded them of home. So they used to have buckthorn in their own backyards and gardens. And they said, oh, I'm moving to Canada. I want something that reminds me of home. And they chose to bring along the common buckthorn. However, this is not a very healthy plant for our local animals. It has these berries here, and these berries are kind of like candy, where they are not really healthy, but they are yummy. And a lot of our birds who migrate, right, they fly south for the winter, they will come and eat all of these berries from the buckthorn, and then they don't have the right kind of energy to go on their migration. Kind of like if we were going to go for a really long run and we decided to eat a bunch of chocolate bars, we wouldn't feel too great. If we were going to go and eat a nice big bowl of oatmeal, we would feel much better. And that's what a lot of our native plants have. The plants that are here and have always been here, they have the right kind of energy, the right kind of nutrients for us and our birds. So we want to try and get rid of this option, try and take away the candy so that the birds eat the right kinds of food. So what we do is we will cut down these trees or we'll pull them up and we try to get them out of the habitat. And once we have some space removed from these guys, we're able to then put in some new, better native species. So back in 2021, we actually removed about 1,500 meters squared of common buckthorn at Cold Creek Conservation Area in King. So we removed a lot of buckthorn and we'll be going back again this year too. And once we've got this space, we come in and we plant trees. So last year, we planted just over 6,000 trees and shrubs here in Peel region and York region. And again, we talked about the reasons that trees are good. They have those roots that can hold the soil in place. They are also good at filtering water. So any rain or water that comes off of our streets and passes over some plants, the roots are able to clean the water, take out the bad stuff before the water continues to move underground into our rivers. And here we've got a picture from Cold Creek Conservation Area. Again, last year we were there helping, trying to fix up this area, and we planted 400 trees at Cold Creek Conservation Area. And I believe we'll be going back again this year to plant another 400. In addition to our planting at Cold Creek Conservation, we've planted another 400 trees across King Township. So a lot of our work happens in York region and a good chunk of that right there in King. But now let's look at what we can do to protect our local environment as just individuals, as just people who care, right? There's lots of things we know, we've been learning for a very long time, all of the important things we do, but it's always great to have a little refresher and think about, again, how we can all make a difference, because sometimes we feel kind of small and just one person, but there's still, of course, lots and lots we can do to really have a positive impact. One thing to do is to be careful about what ends up in nature. All right, so there's so many things that we do and ways that things that we use can end up in nature. One thing we all know about is litter, right? We don't want to be a litter bug. We don't want to be the kind of person who just throws garbage anywhere. And the even better thing to do is, if it's safe, if it's possible, if we have an adult with us, would be to pick up litter in our local environment if we see it, right? It's best for us to stop litter in the first place. And then second best thing we can do is to actually pick up litter that we see before it gets to a place where we can no longer see it, right? If it ends up in our rivers and gets taken into Lake Ontario, it's going to be much harder for us to try and collect that litter once it's all the way in our Great Lakes. Another thing to keep in mind at this time of year would be road salts. We, of course, want to keep people safe on our roads and our sidewalks, but we want to be careful about how much salt we use. When we use salt, we are almost always using too much salt. So it's important to understand how much salt we really need. For about 1 meter square or one sidewalk square, we're looking at really only 1 tablespoon of salt. And the salt can be about 2 inches, 5 centimeters apart, each little piece. So when you see a big pile of salt, we know that that's too much and that's not going to be necessarily helping. because what happens is as the snow melts, it then carries this salt into our storm drains, into our sewer drains, which are then connected to our local rivers. And there have been studies that show, research that shows that places in the Greater Toronto Area have been found to be as salty as the ocean. And we know that we've got freshwater animals here, so they do not like that salty ocean water. So it's just something for us to think about, A, using less salt, or B, trying to use a salt alternative, or at least try and find something to complement the salt that we put out there. Things like gravel, sometimes very natural kitty litter, sometimes sand. Just try and use less when we can. We also want to be thinking about what goes down our drains in our homes. Our sinks, our toilets, our bathtubs, they are all connected to our sewer systems, and those are then connected and to our natural water as well. But it is the water that comes out of our homes is cleaned before it gets into nature compared to our storm drains. So again, an important thing to remember there. We don't want to be using chemicals in our homes when we can. Try and avoid using cleaning products that have lots of chemicals in there. Trying to find better, more eco-friendly alternatives is always great. And just think about ways that we can limit how much chemicals or other little things like glitter, pieces of plastic that could end up down our drain and into our natural bodies of water. We all know our 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, but we have 2 new layers up top. We have rethink, which is about thinking about the different activities we do every day, the different products we use every day, and really think about whether those are good for the environment or not. If they are not so good for the environment, maybe we can think of some different things to do instead. We also have refuse, which is about saying no to those things that are not good for the environment. Maybe the next time you go for takeout and they offer you some plastic cutlery or a plastic straw, you just say no, thank you, and you just wait till you get home and use your own cutlery. We also have recycle, which is all the way down at the bottom, and that's because there's new research that says that only about 10% of the things that we put in our blue bin is actually getting recycled, right? So 90% of the things we put in our blue bin, we are wishfully recycling and hoping that it gets recycled, but unfortunately, when they get to the sorting center, it goes into the garbage instead. The top reasons that things are thrown out instead of recycled is because they aren't clean. So things like our peanut butter containers, yogurt containers, they have to be empty and clean before we put them in the blue bin. Otherwise, they could just get thrown out when it comes to sorting. The good news is that the provincial government is planning to launch a new recycling program this year. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll start to hear more about this new program, and then we can all get back to recycling much, much better. And of course, we know this forever. We should be saving water and energy when we can. So the average person in York region uses about 230 liters of water every single day. So a lot of that water is not that easy to see, but a good chunk of that is coming from our baths and our showers. About 1/3 of the water we use every day is coming from that. So we want to be thinking about maybe taking a shorter shower when we can. Trying to stick under 7 minutes is really ideal, and even less than that if you can. Really make a good challenge for yourself. If we have, when we're a dishwasher, we want to make sure our dishwasher is full. When we're doing laundry, again, we want to make sure we have full loads before we get it started so that we can try and save water in those 2 places as well. And same with saving energy. We all know we should be turning off the lights when we leave the room, turning off devices and appliances when we're not using them, trying to take active transport or active commute when we can, right? Maybe we can walk to school, walk to work, when we can and try and use less energy from our cars. And then we also just want to be thinking about how we have that impact with the energy that we use, and just think of ways that we can continue to decrease how much energy that we use and how much water we use too. Of course, it's always important to keep learning, and York Region has lots of programs to help you with this. York Region runs some low-cost tree and shrub programs to plant in your backyard or neighborhood, and that's a partnership with the local enhancement and appreciation of forests, and they can help you plant trees whether you live in a home, in a house, or in a condo or apartment. So there's opportunities for everyone. It's not just for people with a backyard. I don't have a backyard, so this is really nice to hear that they do support as many audiences as they can through these tree planting programs. And York Region also offers resources and webinars about the local environment. So if you check out the website, you'll be able to get some more information about what they have to offer. It's also great if you can support local environmental organizations when you can, whether that is through volunteering. Ontario Streams, we lead volunteering programs. For right now, we are working specifically with school groups, corporate teams, and community groups. Just with policy, public health policy right now, with the different municipalities we work in, they are looking to just keep the groups closed, meaning that groups must know each other in some capacity. So if you do know a group, whether it's a school group, corporate group, community group, and you'd like to volunteer with us, do some tree planting or garbage cleanup, we'd be happy to coordinate something with you. And we'd also be happy for any donations that come through. As I said, we're an environmental charity. Our funding mostly comes from grants, whether it's federal, provincial, municipal, or private foundations. But we are always happy to see individual donors come through too. So this is everything I've got for you today. So thank you for tuning in. We are on social media at Ontario Streams on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you have any questions, you can always email us at info@ontariostreams.on.ca. So thank you for coming today, or thank you for watching at a later date. And I hope you have a great day.